Well, thank you, Secretary General, and good afternoon, Global Classrooms. What a wonderful sight this is. I thank you all for what you've done to prepare for this important day and the miles you've traveled to be here. You know that you are sitting now in the seats where history is made, and when I look at you, I have hope and inspiration for the future. I've been asked to say a few words about the role of the United Nations designated leader, the Secretary General, the real Secretary General of the UN. And I can do this from personal experience because I have, in fact, worked closely with 3 of them and known fairly well 2 others indeed. So let me just mention them so you remind yourself who they are over the passage of time. The first, of course, was Trygve Lie from Norway. He was appointed in 1945. He was followed by Dag Hammarskjöld from Sweden, and by Kurt Waldheim from Austria, and by Javier Pérez de Cuellar from Peru, and by Boutros Ghali from Egypt, and by Kofi Annan from Ghana, and of course today by Ban Ki-moon of South Korea. That is quite a range, I think you would agree. Each of the Secretaries General was very different from the other. Obviously, different nationalities, different education, different background, and different temperaments. But there were also many similarities, and I'll come to those in a moment. The Secretary General, or as we always call him, the SG, is, of course, the UN's top diplomat. He is the UN's most visible face and most prominent voice. He is appointed by the Security Council, then affirmed by the General Assembly to a 5-year term, which is renewable. But no SG has served more than 2 years, that is 10 years altogether. He does not have, despite the title, he does not have the power of a military general. He does not have the power of command. But nonetheless, he still has quite special powers. Above all, the power to persuade. He can convene. When he asks countries to meet, they come. He can appoint the senior cabinet of the United Nations. He can mediate. He can raise the alarm and call to attention. And he can, of course, in his many speeches to every kind of group you can imagine, inform and inspire. In consultation with the member states, of course, he can do a lot to set the agenda, as with this Secretary General putting a great emphasis on development and climate change and issues related to the health and well-being of women and girls around the world. He can raise awareness and raise funds and dramatize and publicize. He does open the General Assembly and address either the GA or the Security Council, and he meets with presidents and prime ministers when they come here in September. He does travel the world, and he needs enormous stamina to do just that. But of course, he has a staff to support this. Each Secretary General was highly educated. Each one was multilingual, and several were fluent in 3 languages. All of them were communicators. All of them had the capacity to listen well. All of them came from small or mid-sized countries, when you think of those that I just mentioned. He can be independent to a degree, but remembering that he is accountable to 193 member states, and in particular to the permanent 5. Now, you may notice that I keep saying he. The reality is that all 7 have been men, but there are many who think that the next Secretary General should be a woman. What do you think of that? We shall see. There are 2 years to go in this term, but the search is already beginning, and the scanning the horizon to see if there is a woman who has the kind of experience and authority and stature to be a Secretary General. It has been called the most difficult job in the world, and when you consider all the crises that are before the Secretary General, and when you consider the vast range of issues that are the responsibility of the UN, from peacekeeping to development, to disarmament, to human rights, to refugee assistance, to environmental action and global health, and so much more, you might wonder why anybody would want the job. But if diplomacy is your profession, you might then add, why wouldn't they want to lead from the top and to lead by example? Every one of the Secretaries General has understood the value of diplomacy and the ability to make change happen and to create a better world. So with that, I call this to attention. Your Secretary General has a big responsibility too, and I certainly hope many of you will think about serving in diplomatic service as you get older and think about your own work, your own careers.